Ooh, apologies. I don't know what just happened. Okay. Can everyone see my screen now? I think I accidentally unshared.
I can see it.
Awesome. Thank you. Okay. So the first thing that you want to do when you open up your document. So I've got here just a document of nonsense words. So there's nothing here, but we're just going to be playing with formatting. So the words don't really matter. So the first thing that you want to do when you open up or get ready to format this document is check your view settings. So I'm going to try to move so these are going to be in different places depending on the actual machine you're working on. So I'm in a Mac, so I've got some settings down here, but I also have them up in the top ribbon of my screen. They may be different for you. They also may be a little different if you're using a different version of Word. So that kind of makes this conversation just a little difficult, but they're all called the same thing. They're just located a little differently across operating systems. Sorry. So the first thing you do is go over here to your view settings and make sure that you can see your rulers, which if you'll look my screen, you can already see my top ruler. And I always have a hard time getting this ruler to show. So we're going to try it tonight. And if it doesn't, I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time fighting with it, but usually on other platforms, it will come up at the same time. So again, not going to fight with it this evening, but you really want this side view ruler too, because it will help you later when we're adding different top margins. Okay, we want our ruler. We want our paragraph markings. So we're going to find those under home. And it's this little, where is it? It's this little symbol here. So you're going to want to see those. This will be more relevant in part 2, but it's sort of the great intro. You need to be able to see all these things. You also want this outline or this navigation pane for later. It gives you a sort of easy, quick view to see if your margins are moving the way that you want them to later. And so any other settings that help you keep track of what your formatting is doing as you work through this are helpful, but these are the sort of key pieces that you need to be able to see. All right. And I'm going to back up. I'm going to pause right there because I forgot to introduce you to the actual guide, which is a big reason why you're here. So if you will scan the QR code here, you can pull up the entire thesis and dissertation guide document. It is 20 pages long, but that's because we included both the process that should lead up to writing the thesis and dissertation and step-by-step instructions for formatting every section. So I thought that I had linked it as well, but that's okay. This gives me a chance to show you how else you can find it. So if that QR code isn't working for you, you can actually go to A-State's website, search for the Writing Center. And my internet's being a little bit slow. Search for the Writing Center and you want this one, not the online center. For this purpose, you want the regular Writing Center. And you're going to click over here on the left under graduate students. And then that will bring up the thesis and dissertation guide link, which fingers crossed it works for us. All right, great. So this is the entire guide. We're focused mainly on part 2. So we split it into 2 parts. Section 1 covers all of the procedures that are required by the graduate school before you can begin writing a thesis. There are links to all of the forms. There's a checklist for every form and the processes that have to be complete. Work through that with your dissertation advisor. All right, that the Writing Center cannot help you with. That's up to you and your advisor. But section 2 is where we can come in. So section 2 is what we're talking about through these 2 workshops. This is where you'll see your formatting guidelines for ProQuest, for your front matter, and your document pagination. This includes details regarding the expectations for layout of the whole document, as well as tips for achieving that formatting. So you have this huge long table of contents to kind of, if you are jumping around, that'll help you find each section of your text. We're going to just start right on section 2. All right, so you have access to this guide now. You should make it your best friend throughout your entire writing process, but I'm going to go ahead and get rid of that screen and pop back to our guide. Well, actually, sorry, just as an example, as you're reading through this, you'll have a little brief introduction to each section of the dissertation, and then you see a checklist here for your formatting. So you're going to want to make sure before you send this in for review by the campus representative that you've checked every single box on every single page. If you've done that, then you shouldn't have any problems getting cleared. Now, that's not to say you might not find a mistake here or there, but you'll be mostly finished, and your problem should be very minimal if you work through this whole guide step by step. So again, introduction with a checklist for each section of the entire paper. Everyone doesn't have every section, but most of you will have almost all of them. But that's a conversation for another day. Okay, back to it. Sorry about that. All right, so the first thing that you want to do beyond, once you get everything visible, right? We see everything we need to see. You want to take a look at our handy tips for consistency. So these are settings that will not change for your entire document. Let me scooch that. I'm going to try to leave it all visible. That might not be possible because my screen is teeny tiny. So here we go. All right. So these, let's see if I can rearrange things a little more. Okay. So these are in a couple of different places, but you're going to want to start with your margins. So for me, those are going to be under, I believe, file. Yes, file, which is up here, and page setup. I was incorrect. All right. Nope. Where are my paragraph settings? Yes, sorry, format, paragraph. All right, we want most of this to be pretty normal. We need no indentations. We want 0 space before and after lines. Our line spacing for the body of your dissertation, it's usually single spaced. There are places throughout where you'll have some double spacing. For our purposes, I'm going to go ahead and just do single for the entire doc. This is the only thing that might change a little bit, but it's best to start with single because it's easier to add a line than it is to go through the whole document and take them out. So we want to switch. Whoops, that's not what I needed. Format. Yes, so then I went back to format and then I clicked document because I want to play with my margins now. So your left and right margins are going to be 1.25 for the entire document. This is for, I know most of us are used to 1 inch, but this is for printing purposes usually. So 1.25 inches on your left and right margin. Your bottom is always going to be 1. Your top will change in different sections. That's part of part two's, the workshop for part two. For now, we're going to leave that top at 1, and our bottom will always be at 1. All right. So we did line spacing, we got our margins. We aren't inserting page numbers. I've already done it just for a visual reference to pull up our table of contents. But for now, we'll circle back to pagination in the second part. But for now, I've just got regular numbers, running all the way through at the bottom center of my page. So this is all the settings I think that we need here. So I'm going to hit OK. And done. That's all we can do in that for now. Now, another consistency that you can count on is that all of your section and chapter titles will appear in all capital letters. That is our next piece of this. I am showing you the title page here, but this is part of our part 2 workshop. This is an example of what your title page will look like. Notice that there's no page number here. I'll show you how to achieve that in the second half as well. So for now, this is what your title page should look like eventually, and I've got some placeholders here for that information for later. So remember, I just said all section and chapter titles will appear in all capital letters. So I'm going to show you how to achieve that really easily. And this is a necessary piece to making your table of contents work the way that it should. So rather than having to manually kind of create a table of contents, which you really shouldn't do, this step will allow you to insert a table of contents that you can update as you make changes to your doc, if you do have to kind of circle back and do that later. So here, again, I'm kind of blocking the presentation for you, but I need you to be able to see this piece. Okay, so you'll notice I've got this styles pane open. I'm going to close it. So if you don't use that or haven't ever used that before, you'll find it by going to your home tab. Oops. And then finding your styles pane. All right. And that's going to open up all of these different styles that you can play with, that will allow you to create your titles or format your titles and your subtitles the way that they need to be formatted in order to appear in your table of contents the way that they should. So you can start by you can alter any of the templates that are here, or you can create a new one. I'm just going to alter a template that already exists. So I'm choosing heading 1. And I'm going to modify style. So first I want to go through the basics. I know that top to bottom, with the exception of footers or footnotes, all of my text should be the same size and should be consistent throughout my document. I'm just going to swap to the good old trusty Arial. Oops, is it going to? What's happening? Okay, I'm gonna click Arial because it's a standard, and I know that that's what most people are going to be writing in anyway. 12-point font, which I actually think it might be 11 if you're an APA, but you know, hang in there with me. We don't want any bold, we don't want any italics, and we don't want anything underlined, and we want our text, our font color, to be the standard default black text. Now, as I'm doing this, you can see in this window, things are changing, right? So this is giving you a sample of what you're creating will look like in your document. So there's a couple other things. If you could see the presentation, which here, I'll just switch back and forth. We know that all of our headings will be the same. Our main chapter and section headings will be the same. They need to be centered with all capital letters, and they need to have the same font as the rest of my document. So to get that piece, we see we're still left aligned, but we've got our normal text. We're going to go down here to this drop down and select font. And I don't know why it's being so slow. I'm so sorry. We're going to select font and we're going to select here under effects, all caps. So again, it's changing the way I want it to be. And then we're going to hit OK. Please don't close out the whole thing. All right, good. And we're going to go to paragraph. Make sure that all of this is clear, right? Even though you've already set your whole document with these presets, when you start playing with these style panes, that didn't touch them. So we want to check this stuff and make sure that it's back to sort of the same as our default. So we want 0 before and after. We want single line spaces. I typically don't need to mess with this, but I'm going to swap that because I think that's wrong. Normally that's defaulted to the right setting. So I've got my indents and spacing the way they need to be. And I want to go to line and page breaks. I want to make sure that every time I have a new section or chapter, within my dissertation, that it starts a new page, right? This is another formatting rule. So a chapter, so if you've got chapter 1, chapter 2, even if chapter 1 ends halfway through a page, chapter 2 has to start on a new page, right? So I'm going to put page break before here as well. And I'm going to hit OK. And then I'm going to check my, oh, here it is. Sorry. Still from this main screen. This is one more thing we should have done is center that text. All right. So that's done. Again, we can see in our window here that it all looks okay. So I'm going to hit OK. And now I've changed, you see, I don't know how many of you caught that, but if you were paying attention or caught it with a quick eye, you'll see that that heading I just altered now looks exactly like I wanted it to. So what I'm going to do is put my cursor, which I think I had already played with this some. So I'm going to put my cursor, let me reset it. All right, so everything, let me reset that one too. All right, everything is standard. Everything is normal. Well, all right. Is it though? Some of the text looks funny, but it doesn't matter. We're going to ignore that. I'm going to put my cursor before my fake title here, or you can highlight the actual words. You don't have to. You can just place your cursor before it. And then I'm going to click my new heading, and it's going to change it. So this makes your life easier in the long run with your table of contents, but it's actually something that you can do all at once as well. If you wanted to go through this whole document and format all of your headings all at the same time, you could. So putting my cursor there, or I could do it one at a time that way. So let's do it again right here. Let's pretend that's chapter 2. Notice how it jumped for me, started a whole new page. Now you do want an extra line of space. Whoopsie. Undo that. All right. Where did it go? All right. So we've got our next chapter. Amazing. What was I saying? All right. So in the event that you have subheadings, those need to appear in your table of contents as well. This is where things get tricky, and it's difficult to say this to a whole group who might be using multiple style guides. And this is where I'm going to pause to differentiate. So the formatting that you're doing for ProQuest has nothing to do with the formatting that you do for your APA, your MLA, your Chicago. Any of those style guide rules are separate from this formatting that you're doing for ProQuest. Now, there are a few instances where those rules don't mesh, and you default to the ProQuest rules in those instances. However, ProQuest has no governance or no guidelines for any of the subheadings within your document. So if you have subheadings, you need to refer to the style guide under which you are bound with your department, with your academic discipline, for how those should be formatted. So what I'm going to show you now is just an example so we have a visual reference, but it may or may not be what is actually correct for the formatting style guide that you work in. Okay? Got that clear. So I'm going to edit another heading, another style here. Let's pretend that I'm working with with a style guide that says my first level of subheading needs to be left aligned, and that the paragraph starts below it, not on the same line, on a new line. So first things first, I have to make sure all of my stuff is standard. So Arial again, I need 12-point font like the rest of my document. I need black font. And let's just say, let's pretend, all right, that my style guide says my subheading should be italicized. This is just a visual reference again, all right? And they're going to be left aligned, so that's all right. And I want to check these other things. My paragraph settings, they need to be no page breaks, right? We don't want page breaks, so I'm going to leave that out. Indents is spacing, let's take that away. Let's make our line spacing single, and I'm going to hit OK here. Let's see. Anything else? No, I think we're good. So I'm going to hit OK. And again, you can see it should change. Yes. So let's just pretend that my subheading happens here and that starts a new line of text. So again, put my cursor before that subheading, and then I change that setting here. Great. It does exactly what I want it to do. You're going to do this throughout your whole document. Use the heading settings. It might be a little bit of a learning curve, and it might seem really tedious at first to clean them up and set them up the way that they need to be. But when you get ready to insert that table of contents, if you've done this all correctly, and I'm crossing my fingers that I just have, so I'm not proving my my point that it's complicated, you'll be glad that you did it. So the table of contents is a required portion of your ProQuest formatting. It's important to remember or to note that your front matter does not appear in the table of contents. So I'm going to go back here to this this slide. So we'll refer back to this slide again in part 2 if you join us for that session as well, because here I've got listed the kind, because we swap between Roman and Arabic numerals at certain points, and I've listed kind of where that happens in the document. So all of these pieces, that's what I mean by front matter. It's your title page, copyright, abstract, and then dedication and acknowledgments if you have them, and the table of contents. Those items do not appear in the table of contents. Everything after it should. So you want to make sure that those heading settings are correct and that you're using them appropriately throughout the whole document, because now what we're going to do is insert our table of contents. Now, there are some formatting rules for that as well that are detailed in the guide, which I'm flipping to as we speak. Bear with me just a moment. I don't want to miss any of them. All right, again, we're not going to mess with our top margins tonight, but this is going to be one of the pages where your top margin changes, but everything else stays the same. It also has a title table of contents formatted the same way as everything else. So again, all sections, all chapter titles have the same formatting, including table of contents. So what we're going to do is navigate to the page where what is happening? Where that table of contents should be. All right. So we're going to pretend, because it will not be the case in real life, we're going to pretend that our table of contents goes on page 2. So I'm placing my cursor within that page. I'm going to references, and I'm going to this drop down menu for table of contents. It does matter which one you choose. All right. ProQuest wants the table of contents that has your heading starting at the left, or your chapter titles starting at the left-hand side, and those page numbers all the way to the right-hand side, separated by the dots. All right. So your ribbon is what this is called. Or I'm sorry, it's not your ribbon. The what is the leader? My goodness. So the leader is this space in between your title and your page numbers. And you want to make sure that we're choosing the one that is just dots. So if you were to create a custom, you could see that there are some options here for the leader style. We want this one. So, but I'm not going to do a custom. I'm going to insert this table of contents with my stuff, one heading, my headings all the way to the left and my page numbers all the way to the right. And there it is. So those headings that I've inserted, now why on the earth it's underlined, I'm not sure. I think I chose the wrong one. So let's alter that. I'm going to swap it. I think it's actually that one. Yeah. All right. So we have our table of contents and our headings are showing up. Anything that we used a heading style on is showing up. So let's just, for argument's sake or for example's sake, I'm going to insert another chapter title here. Let's say this is chapter 3, right? So using that heading style again, I've got a new chapter. It does not automatically update. You have to manually kind of click until your drop down pops up and hit update table. Update entire table. Whoopsie doodles. Come on. And I'm going to hit OK. And see, now it's showing up again. It should not be bold. You may have to go in and play with these settings a little bit. Let me see if it'll let me. And it may also be worth your time to create a custom table to make sure it's not doing these weird things we don't want it to do. Because you want all of this font to be the same as the rest of your document. And I did not test this or find that setting before we started. So I may update the second. That's what I'll do. I'll update our second half of this workshop with how to customize those settings, because I'm not sure where that is, or if I have to do it here. Let's start with a template. We'll get a tab leader. If you have multiple heading levels, you may have to alter how deeply you go with them. Most folks aren't going to have this many levels of headings. And if you are working in APA or Chicago style, there are rules for how they look. But for our sake, we don't have that many. We're just going to leave it where it is. Let me hit options here. The headings are there. Okay. So, yeah, I'm not seeing it, and I'm not sure. Maybe my eyes are playing tricks and it's fine. But I feel like this is bold and it shouldn't be. The other thing that's a little tricky about your table of contents is that while you're in Word, it's clickable. So every time I'm trying to open up these settings, I'm accidentally clicking something and jumping down to that section. It's nice if you want to click through the paper, but when it's not what you're trying to do, it's a little disorienting. But so those are sort of the key pieces I wanted to cover this evening. If you've got any questions, please let me know. I've made a note to look into that customizing of the table of contents because I haven't messed with that and I didn't think it was going to be an issue. But I'll add it to part 2, which is March 14th at 6:30 on Zoom as well. And so I know that that may not feel like we covered a whole lot, but those are pieces that I've seen students struggle with that if they had known at the beginning, they would have saved themselves hours and hours of heartache. So I'm going to stop share and I'm going to stop the recording.